My rich parents humiliated me my whole life and kicked me out of the house, and now that I have a successful business, they've gotten in touch. I'm 27, and a year ago, I started my own business with a couple of friends from college. We're doing great financially now and are already profitable. A few days ago, my parents, both 54, with whom I haven't spoken since graduating from college, suddenly got in touch and offered to become partners in my business as they wanted to invest in it. I refused. I didn't discuss it with my friends, as they all knew I had a bad relationship with my parents and I didn't want to involve them in our business under any circumstances. My parents always neglected and bullied me as a child, which was, to say the least, strange, as I was the kind of child parents are usually proud of. They are both very well-off people. My father is a dental surgeon, and my mother is a CFO of a company. I grew up in a family of high achievers and, naturally, was very ambitious from an early age. But for some reason, my parents never supported me and constantly made fun of me for being a nerd. They had plenty of money, but they barely met even my basic needs. I had no idea why they hated me so much until I realized they indirectly blamed me for not achieving the success they dreamed of. They were quite successful, but they didn't become as famous as they wanted. I found this out when I was 16, when I complained to my aunt, my father's younger sister, who is now 46, the only person who understood me. She was the one who told me the truth about my parents' baseless hatred, thinking I was old enough to know. My parents blamed me for having to spend time and money on raising me and believed that if they had invested those resources in their careers, they would have achieved much more. They had a child under pressure from relatives and didn't want children at all. But since I came along, they had to put up with me somehow, and they chose bullying and constant humiliation. As a child, I was deprived of many things. Although they paid for everything, there was no real help from my parents. They didn't help with small things like homework or projects, nor with more serious problems like conflicts at school. When I asked for something that wasn't strictly necessary, I was simply shut down or, worse, ridiculed. They made fun of my appearance, which was easy because I was skinny and looked like a typical nerd. They laughed at my passion for computers and said that the most I would ever become was an IT guy that was my ceiling. So, investing money in me was a waste. I was emotionally neglected. I got used to such insults from childhood. Back then, I didn't see anything strange in it and thought the problem was with me. That's why my parents didn't love me as they should. It was pretty crappy, but for me, it was normal. In my teenage years, I started to protest a little against their harsh treatment, but my father quickly suppressed these attempts, threatening to kick me out onto the street if I didn't calm down. So instead of open protest, I started confiding in my aunt, who asked me 1,000 times if I wanted her to report our family situation to Child Protective Services. But I always said no because I was afraid of the consequences. My aunt couldn't adopt me, and I didn't want to be a burden, so I chose to suffer in my parents' house. And when things got really bad, I would talk to my aunt, and it would make me feel better. When I finally found out the reason for my parents' behavior, I decided I would disappear from their lives right after college. Since they didn't care about me, they sent me to a public school. Forgive me for any potential arrogance, but I believe it was a waste of my potential. In any case, it was a clear signal that they didn't care about my education or me in general. However, I still had some expectations of them, which were completely shattered when they announced that after I graduated from high school, when I turned 18, there would be no more room for me in their house until I achieved some success on my own. Furthermore, they refused to pay for my college education. I finally snapped and told them they couldn't do this to me because I knew I had a great future ahead of me. I had been a straight A student my whole life, and if they threw me out on the street right before college, my future would be at risk. But they stood their ground and declared, "You have no future. Stop overestimating yourself." Then they added that I shouldn't hope for a bright future because my teachers and friends had mistakenly convinced me I was a genius, when the most I would achieve was a position as a rank-and-file IT guy who fixes computers for idiots in offices. Honestly, that was complete nonsense, because even these supposedly worthless IT guys have deep knowledge and deserve respect. But my stupid, disgusting parents will never understand that. I tried to convince them to at least pay for my tuition. We could think about housing later, but they were adamant. So a few weeks before my 18th birthday, I ran away from home and went to my aunt's. I applied for scholarships to many colleges, while my aunt continued to persuade my parents to help me, but to no avail. In the end, we decided I would go to the college that gave me the biggest discount on tuition. Fortunately, I was accepted into a college with a scholarship covering 80% of the tuition and a good computer science program. This suited me, and my aunt decided to pay the remaining amount. She worked in sales and didn't earn as much as my parents, but she still agreed to help. Plus, thanks to the scholarship, the tuition was relatively inexpensive. I lived in a dorm and visited my aunt when she was home. She often traveled for work. That's how I spent my student years. My life improved significantly when I left my parents' home. The constant anxiety and worries disappeared, and I became happier and found it easier to make friends. That's how I met my current friends and business partners, with whom we eventually opened our own IT company. Now, we are relatively successful. I thought my parents wouldn't care what I was doing, as it had been that way since my school days. However, when they found out I was graduating from college as the valedictorian, they decided to come to the graduation ceremony. Of course, they couldn't get in since I didn't buy them tickets or invite them. Since we weren't on speaking terms, we met after the ceremony, and I was shocked to see them next to my aunt, who looked as annoyed as I did. I had plans to go for drinks with my friends, but instead, I spent the next 2 hours in my parents' hotel room arguing with them. They were furious that I hadn't invited them to the graduation but had invited my aunt, and they demanded an explanation. It was funny, considering they kicked me out at 18 and refused to pay for my education, even though they had the means. Besides, given all the abuse in my childhood and the emotional problems that still affect my adult life, I felt they deserved no explanation. But I didn't want them to make a scene in front of everyone, so I escorted them to their hotel. There, I couldn't hold back anymore and told them everything I thought of them. I told them I never wanted to see them again, and if they tried to contact me again, I would get a restraining order or something similar. Then I left the hotel and went to meet my friends. I wasn't going to let my parents ruin my happy day. After that, we didn't speak again. Later, I learned from my aunt that my parents were disappointed and angry and even discussed disinheriting me. That didn't change anything, as I never expected to get anything from them. That's how it all ended. It's been almost 7 years since then, and we haven't spoken. A couple of days ago, they suddenly called. My parents had asked my aunt for my number, telling her they wanted to apologize. She gave them my number. My aunt was going to warn me but forgot. I understand, she's been busy lately, so it's no big deal. I'm not mad at her, but I heard no apology. My parents immediately moved on to a business proposal because now, investing in me had become profitable. Naturally, I refused, hung up, and blocked them. Then I told my friends about it. They didn't mind that I had refused my parents without consulting them, as they knew the whole history of my relationship with them. I didn't know what to expect next, but the very next day, my parents retaliated. They tagged me and all my friends in a scathing Facebook post claiming that I was not the self-made computer genius I pretended to be, but just a guy who had achieved moderate success in business with his dad's money. Now, I was supposedly refusing to acknowledge the help they had allegedly provided me all these years. I was in complete shock from this post and almost called them to give them a piece of my mind. But before I did, I decided to respond with something I had been keeping for many years. I had a few old videos left, shot back in my teens when I lived with them and documented daily life, just in case I ever needed to prove in court what terrible parents they were. I never published them because I wanted nothing to do with them, and was sure that if I posted videos of them being rude, mocking me, and treating me like crap, it would definitely have consequences. Back then, I just didn't want the extra drama, so I did nothing. However, their Facebook post changed everything, and I finally posted that video. And here's the moment where I might have been the asshole. I wrote a long Instagram post explaining the whole history of my relationship with my parents and published these videos exposing them. After that, I called my lawyer and explained the whole situation to her. But she was ahead of me and had already started preparing the documents to file a defamation lawsuit against my parents for their actions, and she was also going to contact my partners to see if they agreed with this lawsuit, as their names were also mentioned in the Facebook post. Under that post by my parents, comments had already appeared from several relatives and friends of my parents, writing that it was great I had finally been exposed and that they would never do business with our company. So the grounds for the lawsuit were definitely there. I sent screenshots to the lawyer and told my partners everything so they would be aware of the situation. Once all that was done, I waited for my parents to call, begging for forgiveness. And they did call, demanding an apology and claiming that I had screwed up by publishing those videos. Their argument was that they had published their accusations on their personal Facebook accounts, so only a limited number of people saw them. I, on the other hand, had made a public post on an open profile where many more people would see it, given my number of followers. They said I had to delete the post immediately because people had already started sending them messages with insults and even threats. All of this could put an end to their careers, as they looked disgusting in the videos, and if their employers saw them, they were finished. I lost my temper a bit and replied that they got what they deserved, after which I hung up. Nevertheless, I archived my post and turned off my phone for a while. When I picked up my phone a couple of hours later, I saw an email from my parents. In it, they apologized for everything that had happened in the past but stressed that my revenge was terrible. Moreover, I had posted a personal video of them without their consent, which, according to them, gave them grounds to sue me as well. Apparently, they had already been served with the defamation lawsuit, so they said I had to withdraw it, or they would not hesitate to start talking about my unethical actions, which would clearly have a negative impact on my business. I discussed this with my partners, and they believe we have no reason to back down, as I did the right thing, unlike my parents, who lied and deliberately distorted facts to portray me as a liar and undermine my credibility. Their point of view seems reasonable, but for some reason, I still feel guilty for continuing the case, since my parents apologized in the email. I understand that this lawsuit will bring negativity to all parties, one way or another. I don't know what to do next. Tell me, am I wrong to sue my parents for defamation even after they apologized? Well, I suggest you write your answer to the author's question in the comments right now. In my opinion, the key point here is whether their apology is sincere or not. And if it is, then it's probably indeed worth withdrawing the lawsuit. But if not, then it seems not. But how to know if they are apologizing sincerely or not? That's a big question. Let's find out what happened next. Update 1. Hello everyone. So, I've decided to proceed with the lawsuit for several reasons. First, this decision was made not just by me, but also by my friends and partners. And although their post didn't get as much publicity as mine, I'm sure many people still saw it, and it could have seriously harmed our business. Besides, my parents' goal was clearly to tarnish my reputation and the reputation of my company to satisfy their ego by destroying my life's work. So the defamation charges are well-founded. Second, their apology is worth absolutely nothing, as it was only offered when their own careers were at risk. They weren't sincere. They apologized solely for their own benefit. All my life, I never went against my parents because I was afraid of them. Even now, at almost 30, I'm still scared to go against them. This fear is like a part of me. It's so deeply rooted in me that I didn't even realize it until you in the comments pointed out how many times I had the opportunity to tell people the truth about my parents and how many times I deliberately kept silent for fear of the consequences. But now I understand that I'm in no danger. I have all the power now, and they can't harm me anymore. I will sue them despite their false apologies. We'll see how this all ends. One thing I'm sure of, I will make them pay. I'm tired of being the good guy, especially with those who don't deserve it at all. My parents treated me with outright cruelty, and no child deserves a childhood like that. And since I have the opportunity to get revenge on them, I will. Until now, I've remained above it all, but I see no reason to continue doing so when they attack me again and again just for attention. It's just disgusting, and I'm not going to tolerate it anymore. Update 2. Today, my aunt contacted me to find out what I had decided about the situation with my parents. I told her we are proceeding with the lawsuit. She was pleased with my decision and said she was proud of me. She also apologized for not doing enough for me as a child, although honestly, I don't blame her for anything. At that time, she was just making her way in life and starting her career, so she simply couldn't afford to take full care of me. But when it was needed, she stepped in and helped, and I will always be grateful to her for that. My grandparents and other relatives practically worshipped my parents, so no one would have believed me if I told them how things really were and how my parents treated me. Even if my aunt had gone to Child Protective Services, I could have ended up in foster care or in an even worse situation. I'm not saying she's perfect, but I feel the need to protect her now that many are rushing to criticize the only person who ever stood up for me and supported me with all her might. That's all. I haven't spoken to my parents since their last letter, and they are likely still waiting for me to withdraw the lawsuit. It's been 4 days, and we've decided to first try to negotiate through a court-appointed mediator. If necessary, we'll go to court, but for now, we're set on an out-of-court settlement. My parents have money, and quite a bit of it, so I have nothing to reproach myself for. They screwed up, so they should pay. I don't know what's happening with their jobs now because they had a real meltdown after I published those videos. They accuse me of jeopardizing their careers. It's hard for me to believe how much manipulation and drama there was in their calls and letters. Fortunately, I didn't fall for it. Otherwise, it would have been very sad. And they tried to make my actions seem just as bad as theirs, if not worse. They spread false rumors about me, and I only responded by revealing the truth to everyone. Honestly, I have a huge desire to unarchive the videos after the negotiations are over because my parents truly deserve to be exposed and for the whole world to know their true colors. Update 3. Today, the court approved a mediator for our negotiations and notified us. My parents called me. I temporarily unblocked their number for this conversation to ask when exactly I would withdraw the lawsuit, as the situation was getting out of control. I told them that wouldn't happen, and they literally lost their minds. They started freaking out. I could barely understand what they were trying to tell me. One thing was obvious: they were beside themselves with anger. There was a lot of incoherent screaming, and in the end, I just hung up. However, they immediately called back. This time, my father said that I had really pushed him over the edge and that such tricks didn't scare him at all. I fought back and finally told them everything I think. It was harsh but extremely necessary, and after that conversation, I felt a huge sense of relief. After everything was said, I just hung up without giving them a chance to continue the argument. But they didn't back down. After that, my parents called my aunt and started telling her that I was suing them for absolutely no reason, which is completely untrue, and tried to manipulate her feelings so that she would pity them and convince me to stop the proceedings. However, my aunt is not so easily broken. Besides, my parents had used the "but we're family" argument too often for it to still work. So she told them exactly what I asked her to say. She said she could express sympathy for them, but nothing more. And if they continued to call her, they would lose even that sympathy, and she would report them to the police for constant harassment. That was cool of her. After that, I didn't hear from my parents for several hours until the evening. It turned out that when they failed to win my aunt over to their side, they contacted literally all our relatives, telling them I was suing them for no reason at all. As a result, all the relatives started sending me the same message. It was a rather clumsily executed idea because it became obvious that my parents had sent everyone the same template text instead of at least changing it a little. Most of them just forwarded it verbatim. It became clear that it was my parents who had instigated them, hoping to make me change my decision. Honestly, it's even sad how desperately they are trying to fix the situation, realizing that it's already hopeless. Update 4. The legal proceedings have officially begun. We're on a break now. I just had lunch and am writing this post sitting in the lobby. My parents were spitting venom, but it's obvious they're losing. If they want to avoid a full-blown trial, they'll have to agree to our terms. When we went out for the lunch break, my father was glaring at me, and my mother was trying to comfort him, playing the helpless woman. But no one bought it, as we all knew it was just a performance. My friends and business partners have been incredibly supportive and are by my side at every stage of this process, for which I am very grateful. Even now, one of my friends said that if I want to talk after all this, he's always there, as he understands how emotionally difficult this is for me. I am sincerely grateful that despite having terrible parents, I have wonderful friends and a loving aunt. I really appreciate everything I have. Well, that's all. I'm waiting for your opinion on the situation in the comments. Do you think the author did the right thing by taking the matter to court, or should he not have done it because, despite everything, they are still his parents? Or maybe it was enough to take the matter to court but then stop and not sue? Anyway, I'm waiting for your opinion in the comments. Thank you for watching this video to the end. Watch our previous video, which you'll see right here. And good luck to you.